Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is the Sentinel, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today we will be venturing into spin-off territory as we look at The War Master, Series 2, The Master of Callous. Released in December of 2018, directed by Scott Hancock, written by James Goss and Guy Adams. I'll be doing this one a little differently, whereas previous spin-off box sets were kind of done similar to the new series, to the revived series of Doctor Who, the episodes all adding up to a loosely connected story plot. The War Master is done similar to Unit Dominion, from what I've heard, because I still have not listened to Unit Dominion yet. It's one of those that's on my list. But rather than the 4 stories of the Master of Callous adding up to sort of adding up and making up this one narrative, the 4 stories are one narrative. So when the first story ends, the second story picks up where the first one left off, continuing it. Whereas, say, like Diary of River Song, for example, all 4 stories add to the overall plot, but they don't contribute anything to each other. So that's kind of the difference there. And I wasn't even planning to review this set, but I just had to because, wow. So the story of the Master of Callous is set on this little colony called Callous. And the thing is, it was the colony was founded by a bunch of artists who wanted to sort of get away and sort of express themselves and sell their wares. The backstory of Callous itself is done very quickly. And as it turned... But the problem is that Callous is so far away in this corner of the universe, it's so isolated that the people here can't really make a living doing that. And sort of one of the major issues with Callous is that there is a massive... what is the word? A massive lode, L-O-D-E, beneath the surface of an ore called Sueño. And Sueño in universe, in this story, is an ore that is extremely valuable and used to build spaceships. And, well, no, they say there's other uses for it, but they only ever say spaceships. The problem is, at least the way it's set up, is that in its raw state, being exposed to Sueño can drive someone insane. In fact, in one of the stories, the Master makes a reference to Quicksilver. So there's your comparison. Sueño is basically Mercury. So Callous has access to this valuable mineral, this valuable ore, but they can't get it. And that's made more complicated by the governor of this region of space, a woman named Teramum, continually taxing the town, trying to force them to make a living by getting the Sueño. I should start off by saying, even though I'm going to cover this set as a whole in one go, the 4 stories are The Call of the Dead and The Glittering Prize by, I want to make sure I don't mix them up, by James Goss, and then The Persistence of Dreams and The Sins of the Father by Guy Adams. One of the things that The Call of the Dead, that is mentioned in The Call of the Dead, is that previously they had used... oh, I forgot to do the cast. Oh, well. That previously the colonists tried to use the Ood to mine the Sueño, but it drove them mad, and now the forest is full of mad Ood. Actually, thinking back on it, I think this is the Big Finish debut of the Ood. Anyway, and that's something that's never really explored. Like, every so often they call back to the mad Ood in the forest, and they never really do anything with that. And they do some things with the Ood, let me tell you. And Silas Carson as the Ood is great. Like, in the making of feature, when they were getting the licensing rights from Russell T Davies to use the Ood, he asked them to make the Ood terrifying again. And for the most part, it works. Every scene with the Ood is just extremely unsettling. And as we go on, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But so the first eighth of this story, because he only shows up in the first half of the first story, focuses on the current leader of this colony, a man named Elliot King. And the governor continues to try bearing down on him to force... Terramon continues to bear down on him and force him to mine the Sueño, but he continues to resist. He uses his own fortune to try and pay her off, continually bankrupting himself. And when she makes threats against his wife and daughter, he sends them away to try and keep them safe. And every time something happens, an Ood with a very old-style telephone, I forget what they were called, shows up saying, "I have a call for you." And there's something about this story, the entire series as a whole, that's very 1984. Like, it's not an Orwellian future or an Orwellian setting or anything, but in the climax of 1984, there is sort of a sliver, a small sliver of hope, because as the main character of 1984 is getting tortured, you know, it's talking about how much extraordinary effort it takes to break the human spirit. And that's kind of what's going on here in the Master of Callous. It's that every time something bad happens to Elliot King, this Ood shows up with this phone saying, "I have a call for you." And every time he pushes him away, he refutes that call. Only at the end of his story, when he's lost everything and he's in danger of losing even more, does he accept the call. And of course, the call is the Master, who, at this point, we just now realized hasn't shown up yet. Compared to Only the Good, the War Master Series 1, the Master doesn't play as big a role here. He only shows up 3 or 4 times in The Call of the Dead, when he makes... He only shows up 3 or 4 times in The Call of the Dead when he makes these phone calls. And then he shows up in the next story, The Glittering Prize, a little more, but he only shows up as like a side character almost, as one of the supporting cast. He's not in The Persistence of Dreams at all until the very end. Sir Derek Jacobi shows up in The Persistence of Dreams, but the Master is not in it. And then, again, he plays sort of a side role in Sins of the Father until the very end, when he takes the lead. And when I did my ranking of the Masters video, I said Peter Pratt from The Deadly Assassin was my favorite Master. And as I've listened to this, I'm starting to realize it might actually be Sir Derek Jacobi, because it's just... he goes places, he goes to such depths, such evil with the Master, that none of the other actors playing the Master have ever gone before. And quite honestly, I don't mean this as an insult to the other actors. I don't even think the other actors who've played or are playing the Master are capable of going to that length, the length that Sir Derek goes. Like, he is... There are moments in this story, like those phone calls in The Call of the Dead, where he is absolutely terrifying. And I will say this, in that first call that he makes to Elliot King, I didn't realize this at first. I didn't realize it until he made the other calls to some of the other characters, that he is hypnotizing people still. And that makes it all the more terrifying, because he doesn't even need to be in close proximity. He doesn't even need to make eye contact to hypnotize them anymore. And like I did mention in my Diary of River Song Series 5 review, after Jeffrey Beavers had failed to hypnotize River Song, Derek Jacobi was able to hypnotize River, and I didn't understand that. And someone mentioned that it was a plot point in The Master of Callous, and hearing the call of the dead, it makes it clear how he does that, because he still exerts his influence over these characters, but now he's using their own history against them. He knows what they're like. He knows their personality. So he's basically preying on their insecurities to manipulate them. And yeah, that really shows itself in the first scene. Like, because finally, when this character, Elliot, has nothing left and he accepts the call, the Master basically says, "You're a weak, spineless, pathetic man. I showed up repeatedly to help you, and you refuted my help. At this point, there is only one thing you can do to make this situation better." And Elliot kills himself. And then from there, for the rest of the set almost, the story focuses on Elliot's daughter, Cassie. Cassandra? They call her Cass. And her wife, Martine, as they inherit Elliot's debts and try to take over. Like, basically, when she was sent away, Elliot became a mining engineer so she could learn how to work the Sueño mine. And, you know, she brings in slave Ood, and the Ood seem to be breaking down a lot. Like, you know, a lot of times you hear them going, I am the, and you will obey. And it's just from there on, after this first time this happens, every time an Ood shows up, you are just on the edge of your seat. You are tense, you are holding your breath, because every time they show up, every time this happens, you're just going, what did the Master do to the Ood? What are the Ood gonna do for the Master? It's a great tension. And that leads us really to the glittering. Does it? Well, there is well, no, because the Master makes a few more phone calls in Call of the Dead where he preys on them. And Ood makes a very disturbing prediction about Cass's wife, Martine, which, holding off on that, because later story. And Call of the Dead, basically after Terramon tries to exert her will, tries to strong-arm Cass now for more money, does Cass accept the Master's call? Does she accept his help? And that's where the glittering prize picks up. The Master shows up as, I forget what his pseudonym was in this story, as this kind old man. He improves the psychic dampers on the Ood so that the Sueño doesn't affect them, so they can mine it effectively. He's basically acts as a godsend to the people of Callous. But, you know, now that they're mining the Sueño, now that they're making money and paying off Governor Terramon, Cassie is starting to change. Because what happened is everyone on Callous had a share of the mine, and at the end, because of a character played by Barnaby Edwards, who the Master manipulated, in a really chilling phone call. I just can't get over how utterly terrifying Sir Derek's version of the War Master is. But basically, they sold all their shares of the mine back to Cass so that she would own 100% of the mine, so that any wrath Terramon incurred would be solely on her. And now that the mine is producing money and there's an economy to Callous, Cassie is the one benefiting, and the townspeople are jealous, which, you know, that's actually another great disturbing thing about this story, is that even though Cass is obviously in the wrong, like, you know, she wanted to do this not just for her father, but for everyone on Callous, it forces you to agree with her, because she is kind of right. When things got hard, everyone abandoned her, and now that things are easy, now that things are going great, they want the payout. And yeah, it's kind of uncomfortable, as it forces you to... It's kind of uncomfortable as it the story almost forces you to agree with Cassie, with her mindset. And it's interesting, too, because as the stories go on, we kind of see this relationship between Cass and Martine slowly deteriorate, because Cass is not the same person. Like, you know, Martine brings up that whenever they'd get in a fight, Cass would make this sound, this huff or whine or something, and the fight would be over. Martine has basically won. Which, it's a cute scene. It plays up to the actress's chemistry really well. But then Cass keeps going, and Martine can't help but notice this. It's like, wait, you huffed. The fight's over. Why are you still going? So, yeah, we're continuing to see Cass following in her father's footsteps. She's proud. She's trying to hold on and fight, but she's continually breaking down. And then this story kind of ends with basically the Ood have discovered a much more refined, much more pure vein of Sueño, and somehow Governor Terramon finds out, and she is basically coming for an inspection. Translation, she's coming to steal the Sueño and kill everyone. They make a plan to hide the Sueño, make it look like the mine's broken down, make it look like, you know, there's no way to get to it otherwise, while the Sueño they have mined, they're going to hide away until the governor leaves. And what happens is the Master leaves with Martine, and things don't go as planned. The governor chases after him, and Martine, realizing what's going on, Martine decides to stay behind and guard the Sueño until the Master can come back. Only the glittering prize ends with the Master being captured by Terramon. And then we get to the persistence of dreams. Holy crap. First of all, I can't help but feel that this story can be compared to The Skyman from Series 1, Only the Good. Where, I mean, there are obviously very big differences. They are very big story. They are very vastly different stories, but it feels like, you know, we had The Skyman, which was sort of built up to be this Shakespearean tragedy, because it was focused on, it was pretty much a solo focus on another character. And it's like, let's do that again, a solo story featuring another character, but let's do it as a horror story. Because, like I said, the first two stories built up that, you know, being the Sueño is like mercury. Being exposed to it will drive a person insane. And Martine is being left basically on her own. She's got an Ood with her to guard it by herself. So this hour, this story, you just spend this hour listening to this woman lose her mind. It is a tough sit, and it is... And like I said, I'm a bit of a sadist. I like tragedies, and it is absolutely chilling and brilliant and heartbreaking. And one of the things that works so well about this story is that you begin to question reality with her. Like, she's blacking out. She's losing memories of what's happened. Like, she'll be running laps on the track 1 second, and then she'll be in her room with no memory or recollection of how she got there. There's a couple of points where the story hits her head. Like, there is a food machine, and it's basic, and well, if you're unfamiliar with food machines in the Doctor Who universe, they're basically machines that secrete a protein liquid that can be transmutated into food. And this food machine breaks down, and a couple of times in the story she tries to repair it. So keep in mind, we have a woman basically isolated. Like I said, there's one other person, an Ood. We have a woman basically isolated on her own, exposed to a substance that is... I'm gonna go there. Exposed to a substance that is just fucking with her mind. And now there is also the potential possibility that she is slowly starving to death. And she has this hallucination where she is sucked into the food machine. And she meets another person played by Jacobi. And, well, first, Zach Rosenfeld, if you're watching this, you might have oversold Food Machine Jacobi a little bit. I mean, it's still a great, tense scene, but it's not as creepy or as horrifying as you made it out to be. And I can't really talk about Food Machine Jacobi. That's something you have to experience for yourself. But I'm going to go back to Call of the Dead for a minute. Basically, while all this stuff was happening in the beginning, the Ood with the phone shows up, and Martine sees him and asks what it is, and what's going on, who is that phone for, and the Ood says, "I have no call for you." And then when she's about to leave it at that, the Ood continues, "But I have a message for you. You will die alone, screaming in the dark." So Martine's mind continues to deteriorate, and her sanity continues to unravel until she reaches the point where she puts on a spacesuit and leaves the station, trying to gather her memories, trying to calm down. And, you know, I'm trying to recall what exactly happened, but she somehow gets well, what happened is she thinks the Ood tried to kill her, and this is really at the point where you are trying to question your reality. What is Martine hallucinating? What is really happening? So she gets in this spacesuit and she goes outside, and then somehow what happens is she leaves the gravity field, and because there's no artificial gravity, she's now sort of drifting away from the station. And she manages to radio Cass, and Cass says she's coming for her. And then the Master calls her. And she tells the Master what happened. "Oh, the Ood tried to kill me. I'm drifting away in space." And the Master tells her, "There was no Ood. Cass didn't radio you. You've been hallucinating." And then the call ends. And all you get are these hallucinations Martine has been having, sort of catching up with her, as you hear the suit's internal warning system saying, "Oxygen running out. Estimated oxygen remaining at 5 minutes." And, the story ends basically with her screaming. And one of the things that sets this story apart is, unlike the other stories in this set, this story doesn't begin or end with the War Master theme. This entire story, this entire set is really unsettling because, the War Master, Only the Good, is pretty much, can this day get any worse? And the Master of Callous is, yes. Yes, it can. And then we end with Sins of the Father. And we're kind of going back to that breaking the human spirit thing I mentioned earlier, because now the Master is doing it to Terramon. He has been captured, he has been bound, and he's being interrogated and tortured for the location of the Sueño. And the entire time he is laughing as they inflict these damages to him. He is mocking them the entire time. And even though he's the prisoner, you never lose the sense that he's really in control. And Terramon is close to losing her mind because she, after being so close to getting what she wants, she's not getting it anymore. So she decides to enact a scorched earth policy on the people of Callous. Partially as a means of revenge, because Terramon is kind of a petty, terrible woman. And Cassie, not knowing what's happened to Martine, Cassie is and once again, the people of Callous basically turning on her. Cassie is losing her mind. There is this great emotional scene, I think it's about a minute long, where she just breaks down. She rants, she storms through, she destroys things. I got a little choked up listening to it. And then she hallucinates her father. Oh, where to go from there? And this is where we start learning what was going on. First of all, the scenes with the Master and Terramon are great. It's very Silence of the Lambs, very Hannibal Lecter-ish. Fun fact, before Sir Anthony Hopkins, the role of Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs was offered to Sir Derek Jacobi, who turned it down. You know, because again, he is the prisoner, he is the one bound, and yet he is in control. And then we find out what he did to the Ood. Similarly, he hypnotized them, he manipulated them, he took control of them. And, well, that's pretty much it. He just now, when everything's about to go to hell, now he's enacting his plan. So what happens is he breaks free when Terramon is investigating him, and in another chilling scene, you know, it's like, he basically tells her, look, you're not in control here. I'm going to kill you, so you can spend the last minutes of your life either asking whether or not where the Sueño is, or whether or not I'm going to spare your life. And she pretty much just this close to losing it, asks him where the Sueño is one more time, and he breaks his restraints, and he says, okay, the answer to the question you should have asked is no. And then as Terramon's forces are invading Callous, the Ood go berserk and start attacking them, well, the soundscape for the conclusion here is a little garbled, it's a little messy, but I've had that issue a lot with a lot of Big Finish's big, grandiose scenes, so it's nothing exactly new, but, and then, you know, Cass sees the Ood attacking Terramon's forces and rallies the town people to help him, only for the Ood to turn on the people of Callous and wipe them out. And the Master shows up and explains to Cassie what's been going on. The Master was sent to Callous by the Time Lords to recruit, to get the Sueño before the Daleks could. And, you know, he has the Sueño, and he's poisoned the mine so that the Daleks can't get to it. So with nothing left, Cassie screams and begs the Master to take her to Martine, and in true sadistic fashion for this Master, he says, oh, I could, but I don't like you very much, and he leaves her to the mercy of the Ood, who, because of the Master's conditioning, have no mercy. And then it does kind of go on to something I kind of have an issue with. Because now we get that ending scene from The Persistence of Dreams from the Master's point of view. It turns out, which, first of all, when the Ood go berserk, and Martine says the Ood tried to kill her, that all fits together like a puzzle. But then, you know, he calls Martine, showing that this conversation she had with him in The Persistence of Dreams actually happened, and I don't think I like that. You know, that scene in The Persistence of Dreams, it kind of works like In the Mouth of Madness, a John Carpenter film starring Sam Neill. Good movie, kind of underrated. Or the ending of Inception. It works because you don't have the answers. And I feel like the Master calling her gives us an answer that we didn't want or need. And then, after that, what surprised me is that, another big spoiler, we get a cameo from Sean Carlson, who plays Coordinator Narvin in Big Finish's other spinoff, Gallifrey. And, you know, he's getting the Sueño, and he gives the Master a chameleon arch, which will tie into Only the Good, and ties into Utopia. Which I thought was a nice touch. So that was the War Master, the Master of Callous. A truly fantastic release in the War Master range. And if I'm being honest, I actually like the Master of Callous much more than Only the Good. Like I Davros, the War Master series shows how bleak the world can get when the Doctor isn't there to save it. And as much as I'm excited for it, that does concern me a little bit with the War Master Series 3, Rage of the Time Lords, because it's going to feature the 8th Doctor. And because of that, I'm kind of worried we're not going to get that same level of darkness as we had in these first 2 series. But that's just me. What were your thoughts on the War Master, the Master of Callous? Start a conversation in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe. Click the little bell next to notifications to get... Click the little bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. In the description box below, you will find the link to Big Finish's website and the War Master, the Master of Callous, where you can purchase it for yourself. You'll also find the link to my Twitter, where you can get updates on me and the channel, and my Ko-fi, where you can consider supporting the channel and helping it grow. This is the Sentinel, watching over geekdom, and I'll see you guys next time.